who are you? Why are you in my house? And she'll be like, yo, we were just chatting.
Remember me? It's been a minute.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're well. Today we are going to be doing my October wrap up. So in October, I only read 9 books.
I'm ashamed.
Oh.
Which is the second lowest number of books I've read in a month this year. My average is kind of between 11 and 14. In August I read 7 when I was in a big slump, and then this month I read 9. If you watched my reading my spookiest books vlog, you'll know that I gave myself like a week off from reading, really. Like I barely remember it, to be honest, but it happened apparently. I just didn't really read for a week, so that's why the number is so much lower. One thing I do want to say, and I did say this in my last wrap up where my stats were a bit better than they are this month, but although I give my stats in these monthly wrap ups, I used to do quarterly wrap ups, and I think they were a lot more accurate for some of the different statistics like genre or author race, stuff like that. I don't think a monthly wrap up, particularly a month where I didn't read that much, is a very good representation of my reading habits. So I think things like quarterly wrap ups and end of year wrap up is a much better measure for that. I don't feel like a lot of my statistics this month are kind of representative of my reading as a whole. I read a total of 3,225 pages, which is an average per day of 104. That's fine. As long as my daily average is over 100 pages, I think that's fairly good. In terms of genre, I read 1 contemporary, 1 fantasy, 1 graphic novel, 1 historical, 1 horror, 2 mystery, 1 non-fiction, and 1 sci-fi. So a really wide spread of books there. The book that I categorized as horror, I didn't necessarily think was horror. Home Before Dark by Roni Sager. That probably is a thriller, but it was categorized as horror on Goodreads. So horror or thriller there. I do like that this month I read completely different genres across the board. I didn't read any high fantasy, which I typically do. I feel like fantasy is more of a summer thing, and then I get more into things like historical and mysteries in the autumn and winter months, as I'll talk about more. But I'm pretty happy that we've got a really wide spread of genres there. I like it to be like that. I like to be reading all different kinds of genres. Well done, Megan.
I'm blushing a little here. Oh my god. Okay.
Okay, so I read 3 audiobooks and 6 physical books. That's pretty standard for me. I do read my majority of books physically. I don't tend to read a lot of ebooks. I didn't read any this month. Something that's interesting is that I read 6 adult books and 3 young adult, so no middle grade. I would say I usually will read maybe 1 middle grade a month, but I didn't have any this month. And I read loads of adult books, which is really surprising to me. Usually I would say it's kind of 50-50 between young adult and adult, but not this month. Apparently I was feeling adult books this month.
Hey guys! Haven't seen you all summer. How are you doing? Paige? New year, new look, new page.
In terms of ratings, I didn't give out any ratings below a 3-star, which is pretty good. I gave out 2 3-stars, 1 3.5 star, 2 4 stars, 2 4.5, and 2 5 stars. So some of those 3 stars and the 3.5s were books I was hoping were going to be 5s and were kind of disappointing reads for me. I think my average rating this month was a 4.0556. So a 4 basically was my average rating this month, which is good. I would like on average my average rating to be above a 4. One stat that I'm not very happy with is that in terms of the books I read from 2 black authors, 6 white authors, and 1 where the race is unknown. If I'm not 100% sure, I do not want to assign anyone's race to anyone. So I read 67% white authors, and I've spoken about how in the past I would like to keep that to kind of 50% or lower. I'm not happy about that. But like I said, I only read 9 books, and I don't feel like monthly wrap-ups are a good representation of that. Hopefully when I come to the end of the year, it will be 50% or lower for white authors and the rest will be more diverse authors. Let's get into the books I read this month. So I'm going to go through them in chronological order, but where some of these early ones I don't remember very well.
I don't remember, love. I don't remember at all. I really don't. It was an awful long time ago.
The first book I cannot speak much about because I barely remember it. And it is I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones, and is it Gilly Siegel? Yes. I gave this 3 stars. I barely remember this book. Like, it was a very short audiobook. I remember that's why I picked it. The way that I'm going to talk about this plot is the way I usually talk about a book I haven't read. So that really shows you just how unmemorable this book is. But this is about 2 girls, 1 white and 1 black. I believe our authors kind of each wrote from one perspective. Something happens at the high school. A big fight breaks out. I think someone attacks a police officer, but that scene was so unclear. Like, it was so unclear.
What the heck is going on?
But something kind of contentious happens at the high school, and it means that these big protests break out in the city, very much like, I think, based on race. The girls are kind of stranded at the high school and have to walk through the street that the protests are on to get home. And it's very strange. Like, there's not really a plot. It's just them walking from one place to the other and them learning about each other and them kind of striking up this unlikely friendship. I feel like it could have been way shorter. Like, I feel like it could have been a novella. The pace wasn't really there. Basically nothing was impressive. I mean, obviously I didn't hate it because I rated it 3 stars. Like, that's not bad. But it didn't leave a lasting impression on me in any way at all. I was just very underwhelmed. Like, I was just very underwhelmed. And obviously I can barely remember a single thing about it. It deals a lot with kind of like racial inequality, police violence. It was just, okay, we're not going to talk about it. I'm never going to talk about that book again. Like, I can guarantee you now, I can just erase it from my memory. The next book I read was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and if you watch my vlog for this, you'll know I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. I loved it so much. It was so good.
This is so good, oh my god.
It's one of the weirdest books I've ever read. So we have Inez, who goes to Catherine House, which is this very prestigious college. And you know, when you go into Catherine House, you ain't leaving for 3 years. You have to stay there for your entire 3-year stay. You are not really allowed any contact with the outside world. Particularly in the first part of this novel, Inez is struggling with her mental health. She's struggling to be motivated to attend college. She's struggling to get out of bed. There's some very sinister workings going on that she isn't necessarily paying attention to. One of the most interesting parts of this is that Inez is kind of shut off for a lot of this. So there's these things that you're like,
Go. You need to find out what's going on there.
and she's like, no, I'm good, thank you. I'm just not gonna pay attention. Like, this ain't my problem. This ain't my problem.
Inez, whenever something shady happens.
We are going to pretend we didn't hear that.
It's very culty. The school is very culty. The way that this is written, prepare yourself. It is one of the most like weirdly written books. It is so disjointed and claustrophobic and nonsensical. It's a very, very strange book, but I love it. This has got awful ratings. Everyone else seems to hate it. And I can understand it, but also you are wrong. Like, objectively, you are wrong. I am right. Catherine House is a character itself in this book. It's also a book that is kind of difficult to describe once you're out of it. It makes you feel a bit crazy when you are reading it. And then once you're out of it, you're like, whoa, what was that? But if you are looking for a weird book, dark academia, exquisite vibes, something very strange and out of the ordinary, I would definitely recommend you pick this up. I think everyone needs to read it. It was so good. But if you hate it, don't come to me for a refund, because probably a lot of you will hate it. And I just gotta accept that. The next book I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Now, I won't spend too long on this because I do have a whole reading vlog with my whole review and all my opinions in it, so you can go watch that. I gave this 4 stars. So we follow Addie, who makes a deal with this kind of supernatural figure. Some people call him like a demon or the devil, but I don't think that that is necessarily an accurate description of him. And she begs to be able to live forever. And she makes this deal with him, and it turns out that the deal is she can live forever. She can live as long as she wants to. She has the power to decide when to end it. But in return, no one will ever remember her. So as soon as she leaves a room, as soon as anyone crosses a doorway, they don't remember her. So she can be in their house and they can come back into the door and they're like, who are you? Why are you in my house? And she'll be like, yo, we were just chatting.
Remember me? It's been a minute.
So it means that she can never form any lasting relationships with people, and we follow her through these hundreds of years in isolation and on her own, and then someone remembers her and she kind of can't believe it. And it's as much about the story of Henry, the guy who remembers her, as it is about the story of her. Henry was a brilliant character, and the book as a whole is just this haunting, slow character story about Addie and Henry and their lives and what leads them to make the decisions that they do in their lives. It's a very different book from V. Schwab. I mean, I've only read Vicious and Vengeful, but I typically think of her books as very plot heavy, very fast paced, whereas this is the complete opposite of that. And so I really like seeing that from her, but I cried a lot at the end. The end is very powerful, and the end is like, V. Schwab is a genius.
I am so powerful. My mind, it amazes me sometimes.
Like, the way that everything wraps up and comes full circle and comes together at the end is amazing. Okay, so the next book is a complete curveball. I read an Audible exclusive called Stephen Fry's Victorian Secrets. If you don't know who Stephen Fry is, he's the guy who narrates the Harry Potter audiobooks that everyone loves. I mean, we don't need to talk about Harry Potter, but like that's what he's typically known for in the book community. I don't know if even this counted as a book or if it's like a podcast. I count it as a book. It was on Goodreads. I listened to it. This is essentially a non-fiction book narrated by Stephen Fry. He didn't write it. I think it was a guy called John Wolfe who wrote it, taking you through all these different aspects of Victorian society. And like, listen, primary school age Megan was obsessed with the Victorians. I loved the Victorians, and something about autumn and winter just makes me want to read about Victorians and books set in Victorian time. Like, I'm kind of obsessed.
We need this. This is essential. This is a crisis.
It's the vibe I want. I think it's perfect for autumn, the kind of dark, rainy. Do you get what I mean? And this focused on a lot of really interesting topics. There was a chapter, I think it's about 12 chapters, and one of them was on male gay relationships and one was on female gay relationships, and I found it so interesting in the ways that they differed, the way that public attitudes towards them differed, how it wasn't technically, although in law it was illegal to be gay if you were a man, that law didn't apply to women because they kind of just thought women, you know, they're not important, we won't make a law for them. So it was really interesting to read about female companions throughout Victorian times. And there was also a chapter on sex, which I thought was really interesting. We often think of the Victorians as really prudish, but they actually weren't. They were really open about sex. They believed that in order for a woman to get pregnant, she had to orgasm as well as the man. They also believed that if you had an ugly child, that was a result of bad sex. If you had like a beautiful child, that was a result of good sex, which is just so interesting. But it was actually is it the Edwardians who were after? It was actually the Edwardian period that was more prudish, and because that follows the Victorian period, they kind of like rewrote history in some ways to kind of fulfill their beliefs and like their way of life. So it was so fascinating. I gave this 5 stars. I really loved it. I really loved learning about Victorian times in ways that I've never learned about it before. If you do have Audible, I would really recommend this. Of course, it's only an Audible exclusive. It was really, really fascinating. So I would really recommend it. I know it's a bit different and not everyone likes nonfiction, but it just kind of brought the period to life for me in a way that I've never known about it before. Next, I read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and this was a major disappointment for me. I gave it 3 stars. It may even be like a 2.75.
The most hideous experience for me to go through. How horrible and shit.
So this is about a group of friends who at school study Shakespeare, and one of them is killed, and one of them has gone to prison for that murder for 20 years. However, we kind of know he didn't do it, and he has agreed to tell the kind of lead officer who was on the case, who is now retiring, the truth of what happened. And I read this in a reading vlog, and I was just so sad because I wanted to love it.
You did your best, but I guess your best wasn't good enough.
It is a rip-off of The Secret History. It is a complete rip-off. Like, if you're gonna rip it off, do it well. If you're gonna rip it off, do it well. I didn't feel particularly attached to any of the characters. I didn't feel like it had any character development. They were all annoying. And like the characters in The Secret History are annoying. Like they are insufferable. They're some of my most hated characters in the world, but they're so interesting. Whereas these guys are boring. I think there were too many of them. I think they blurred into one another. It just felt distinctly underwhelming. I would just recommend go read The Secret History instead of this. It's the better version. It's the elite version. You'll have a better time. This was boring. Okay, bye. So yeah. Next was a really fun book that I haven't spoken about yet because I didn't vlog it. But I read Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is my second I've read from him. I read The Test, which is a really short book. And like, obviously I'm just obsessed with sci-fi that is in the form of files. So this is files like the Illuminae files, which you all know is one of my favorite series of the year. Oh my God. How am I going to pick a favourite book of the year? I've actually read so many good ones. It's very similar to Illuminae in the sense that it's told entirely through interviews and diary logs. It's predominantly interviews. There's this kind of mysterious narrator, unnamed guy. We never know his name, we never know his occupation, but he is very much in charge of this operation where we are trying to find these sleeping giants. So a massive hand is discovered. They are trying to bring together all these different parts. They are trying to rebuild this massive giant robot thing. It's a really good audiobook. I listened to the audiobook. It's a full cast. Oh my God, they all do such a good job. Particularly the kind of mysterious guy. I loved his narration. It's a very small team. It's all about their relationships with each other, about the political implications of this robot being discovered because whose is it? Who is in control of it? Whose job is it to find it? And it's just so good. I would really recommend the audiobook for this. Did I say I gave it 4.5 stars? It was really close to being a 5. The ending, oh my God.
Maybe she snapped.
I need to read the second one straight away. I'm gonna get the last 2 audiobooks, but I kind of want to own it physically as well because I know it's gonna be a series that I love. But I'm on a book buying ban until after my birthday next year, so do I read it audibly or do I wait until I get the physical book? These are the questions I ask myself at night. Kara, one of our lead characters, is so good. Such like a snarky, like to your face, bold character. I loved her. So I would really, really recommend picking this up. I think it is so good. I have not heard many people speaking about it. And definitely pick up the audiobook if you can, because the audiobook is amazing. The full cast do such a good job. So the last 2 books are all books I read in my reading spookiest books vlog, whatever I called it. Reading spookiest books on my TBR. The first of which is Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray. This was a 3.5 and I was so sad about it because I wanted this to be a 5-star.
It's not for me, Mark. I feel terribly ill all of a sudden. I can't see, I've gone shaky.
So we are following the Diviners. This is the 3rd book in the series. They are a group in 1920s New York who have these kind of supernatural abilities. And in this book, we are introduced to kind of like, I call it the monster of the week because that's kind of like terminology from things like Buffy, where you have a problem of the week, like you have a monster of the week and then you have like a series villain. So this book definitely has a series villain and then monsters of each book. And I think this struggled to give adequate attention to its monster of the week while still setting you up for the series villain in the last book. I also think the other books were better at honing in on a few characters. We've got like 10 main and supporting characters in the group. And something the first 2 books did really well was focusing on 2 of them and really knowing their story. I loved how in Lair of Dreams we really focused in on Henry and Ling, and they were kind of the stars of the show. They went missing in this book. Like, why would you spend a whole book getting me attached to these characters, them being some of my favourite characters in the series, and then barely giving me any of them? Like, I don't vibe with it.
This just killed my vibe. I need to go home.
But don't you think you would really benefit from this?
I'm literally going home.
I was just sad about it. It got a 3.5 because I think the writing is great. I think the world building is great. I think the storyline as a whole is very good. I think Libba Bray's ability for theatrics and just the way you feel reading it is very good. But there were a lot of different aspects of the plot that I was very disappointed in. Hopefully King of Crows, the last one in the series, will be better. I'm hoping to finish it in the next couple months just so that the series is done, because I have a tendency to start a series and never finish them, so I'm trying to just get through the series that I have started. Then I read a graphic novel, The Graveyard Book Volume 2 by Neil Gaiman. This was a really fun read. I gave it 4 stars. We are following Bod as he lives in the graveyard where he has grown up. He escaped to the graveyard when his family were murdered, and the ghosts there and the supernatural beings there have raised him. It's just about him kind of figuring life out as someone who hasn't lived in the rest of society. It's really funny, the illustrations are really fun, it's kind of in this comic book strip style. If you want something easy, quick, fun, that is a bit spooky, this is a great choice. And then the last book that I read was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I gave this 4 stars. So in this we have our main character who, when she was a child, her family fled this house in the middle of the night after only having lived there 20 days, and they claimed that it was haunted, that it had been attacked by ghosts. Her father wrote a very famous ghost book about it, and it kind of followed her throughout her life. She never believed that it was true. She couldn't remember a lot of this happening. So she's always been very skeptic of it and always just wanted her parents to tell the truth, but they never have. When her dad dies, she finds out that her family owned the house still. They never sold the house, which she didn't know. And so her job is kind of like a fixer-upper of houses, so she decides to go there, fix the house up for selling, and also try to find out some of the truth about what really happened. This was really spooky. It's very got supernatural vibes. You don't know whether the house is haunted or not. A lot of people in this small town have a vendetta out against her dad because they resent him writing this story and it kind of being what the town was then known for. So there's a lot of kind of untrustworthy people who resent the family for what happened. I really liked this. I thought the pacing was brilliant. I thought Riley Sager's writing and the atmosphere he creates is so good. I thought particularly what was brilliant about this was that we flipped back and forth between the present day and the book that her dad wrote. And it was just so good at creating questions for you and then answering them 100 pages later. There is this radio that keeps turning on by itself. It will be unplugged and then it will suddenly be plugged in again and be playing music like every morning.
How many people were scared? Me too. I was really, really scared.
I thought it was very unpredictable, which was my main positive for this, because the last book I read by Riley Sager, I really enjoyed, Lock Every Door, but I predicted a major element of it literally from the first page. And so that was a real drawback for me. And so in this, the main thing I wanted for it was it to keep me on my toes, and it definitely did. The last scene, I was like sitting there, hand clutched to my chest, like trying to read it so fast just to get through it. I really liked it, so I'd recommend picking it up if you can. So there we have it. That is my October wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how October went for you, and if you have any plans in November for what you're reading. I'm gonna start reading The Bear and the Nightingale soon for our read along. Also let me know down below if you are partaking in the 1000 Doors readathon with us at the moment and how it's going for you. And yeah, I will see you very, very soon. Bye!